This conference will now be recorded.
There we go. Please stand for the pledge in a moment of silence. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Item number 1, consider approval of the consent agenda items.
Madam Mayor, I make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Will the clerk please call roll?
Shriver?
Yes.
Scott?
Yes.
Adams? Bishop?
Yes.
Malott?
Yes.
Item number 2, requests or comments from the public. There being none, we'll move on to item 3, consider mayoral appointments to the Edwardsville Community Fund Advisory Board.
Madam Mayor, members of the council, what we have before us is the appointments of 2 members to the Edwardsville Community Fund Advisory Board. If you remember, we established the fund at our April 25th, 2022 meeting, and part of that enabling resolution details the makeup of the advisory board, which would place some hand in reviewing the monies coming into the fund, assigning appropriate uses for the fund, that kind of general overall review of the use of the monies deposited into that fund. Part of those, that advisory committee includes a representative of the Cemetery Parks and Public Spaces Board. We recommended and have had some discussions with Thurman Gardner, who currently serves on that board, and his term currently expires in 2024. He is interested in serving on this board. He's been with the CPPS since its shortly after its consolidation, when the Cemetery and Parks Board joined together, and has been really vocal and been a very active member of that board, participating in our park planning and cemetery planning events. He would be the representative from the CPPS board. The resolution also calls for an appointment of a non-elected member at large. Mayor Cahar has recommended Sandy Bonfield, who I believe is here this evening, in case the board has any questions for her. Unfortunately, Mr. Gardner had a pre-scheduled vacation for this week, so he was not able to attend. If you do have questions for him, I can certainly pass those along to him. And Ms. Bonfield is here for questions as well. If you have any other questions for me, I am here for that. And if not, I would turn it over to you.
Madam Mayor, I make the recommendation that we support the appointment of both Thurman Gardner and Sandy Bonfield to the board. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Will the clerk please call roll?
Shriver?
Yes.
Scott?
Yes.
Adams?
Yes.
Bishop?
Yes.
Malott?
Yes.
Great, thank you. And thank you, Sandy, for coming tonight and serving on the board. Item number 4, consider special event permit application from Fastenal for the BK 5K run walk to take place as part of the Edwardsville Autumn Fest in 2022.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is the second time this application has come before this body. The first was last year's 2021 Autumn Fest event. We're a little bit ahead of schedule, but they wanted to get this application in and make sure all their details get squared away. Essentially, it's a repeat from their 5K or BK 5K run walk that they held last year being the inaugural holding of that event, and was pretty popular. I don't have the registrations in front of me, but I know there was around that 40 to 50 folks that registered all told, including some members of our public safety and administrative departments. With getting it approved a little bit ahead of time, we can get a lead on advocating and advertising for it to increase the participation numbers of it for this year. The race route runs exactly the same as it ran last year, and the only spaces that they're going to need some additional help managing the flow of it is detailed. It's in the, let me pull up my map. I believe it's at 9th Street section as it crosses the street heading into Blake Street. So that area, there will need some additional traffic control, but nothing over and above what was requested last year. It was a good event. They're also bringing back their grant program, which was able to provide some revenue for some local charity and aid organizations. Last year, what's not been determined at this point if they'll bring back the donations that they gave to each of our public safety departments, I should say, which they used for different outreach activities specifically aimed at youth folks. So if you have questions about this application, I'm here for those. And if not, staff recommends approval of the application along with the waiving of the daily fee for the special event application.
Madam Mayor, I'll make a motion to approve the special event permit application from Fastenal for the BK 5K Run Walk to take place as part of the Edwardsville Autumn Fest and to waive the fees.
Waive the daily fee. They'll still need to pay the $50 application.
Waive the daily fees.
We have a motion and a second. Will the clerk please call roll?
Shriver?
Yes.
Scott?
Yes.
Adams?
Yes.
Bishop?
Yes.
Malott?
Yes.
All right, item number 5, hearing a presentation regarding the Q1 budget review for 2022.
This will be the first quarterly review of the 2022 fiscal year. We just wrapped up our audit, which came out pretty favorable, a pretty favorable opinion of the city's finances. So this will kind of use that as a launching point, and we'll kind of segue right into budget season, which will start in earnest here over the next couple of meetings and throughout the summer. We'll touch a little bit on that calendar to get into this presentation. But as always, we focus on the major revenue items, so those areas that are netting us over $100,000 in revenue or more. And then we'll do a broader review of the general fund expenditure levels, as well as diving into individual funds and their performance for the first 3 months of the year. Property taxes, our adopted revenue is a little bit over 2.6 million. We're sitting at a little bit shy of 1.6 million at this point, which is right in line with the distribution schedule that we usually find. If you remember, we budget property tax collection at 97% collection. That's to account for any late payments or anything like that. The state forms obviously assume a 100% collection, but for reporting purposes, we're reporting on budget performance weighed against the adopted budget that this body approved, not necessarily the state forms. So right now, we're at 61% of what our budgeted estimated revenue for this line item is. Typically at this point of the year, we're at 58%, which means we're performing a little bit ahead, which is good. So at this point, property tax remains stable and healthy. Not a lot to report on in that area. I will also note this line item or this revenue report combines both delinquent taxes and regular property taxes as one revenue reportable. Sales tax, if you remember last year, was a pretty good year for sales tax, even though we budgeted pretty modestly with a lot of kind of unknowns. We wanted to, loosen up the reins on our estimates a little bit for 2021, but we didn't want to assume another record sales tax year. So we kind of tried to find that conservative balance between wanting to anticipate revenue to support activities, but not, overpromise on some of these deliverables. At least as it stands right now, our first quarter has been performing pretty strongly. Typically, we're at 23% of what the year-end total ends up being, and we're at 27% of what our estimated revenue for the year is. So we're 4% over where we typically are where we typically are in a year as compared to how we perform at the end of the year, which is good because we're still performing very well right now. And that means if things start to take a down slide sometime in the summer, sometimes in late in the fall, which happened 2018 or actually 2019, I believe there was a kind of a statewide decline in sales taxes in those last couple quarters. This sets us up nicely to be able to weather that and make it to the end of the year, hit our budget estimates without having to readjust too dramatically. So sales taxes, short version of this, continue to perform pretty well coming out of 2021 and into 2022. I should say too, if you've got any questions and all that, feel free to jump in and let me know. Franchise revenue, it took us a while to get a handle on that. You'll see in the going back the last 5 years, it kind of goes up and down in those graphs. This is for the first quarter. Some of that is had to do with the consolidation of the electric companies. At this point, we kind of reported on this throughout last year during our estimates. We think we've got a handle on how this fund's going to perform. Typically, we're at 24% of our year-end total, and right now we're at 24% of what our estimated total for the year end of 2022, which was $510,000. So we're a little bit shy of that $124,000 or $125,000 mark, which is right on pace to where we thought we would be based on that year-end revenue estimate. So again, franchise fees, not a whole lot of surprise out of there. Continues to perform as expected, which is what we hope it does for the remainder of the year. Gaming revenue, again, we're performing a little bit ahead. We budgeted a little bit conservatively, still kind of unsure what how that particular revenue area was going to perform. Our adopted revenue for this item for year end is $405,000. We're a little bit over that $100,000 mark right now, so we're at 25% of that reported, that estimated revenue. Typically, we're a little bit less than that, so I mean, not wildly overperforming, but we're at least hitting the benchmarks that we want to hit. So gaming revenue is good. The next couple months are going to be one from a staff perspective we need to pay attention to, because we've noticed we've not received our regular allocation of gaming revenue for the last couple of months because of the Wyandotte County data breach. So I think they're trying to get all of their ducks in a row and making sure that none of this is falling through the cracks. So just you can be confident that we're not going to let this particular item fall through the cracks at the county level, but I'm not sure from a reporting standpoint what we'll be able to report to you at the next quarterly report. Hopefully they've got everything straightened out by then, and we know what to expect typically month to month, so we'll know to watch for if there's some kind of irregularity. But I just bring that up as put things in some additional context. Gaming revenue performing a little bit better than what we thought, not remarkably better. Moving ahead as normal.
Zach, is there any kind of projection on the statewide sports wagering that's coming up? Is it
I've
coming
not
up like in January?
Mm-hmm.
Is that something that should be projected in this budget that we're doing?
Probably not for 2022, but by the time we get into 2023, I'm not exactly sure how that is going to affect the sports book aspect of it is going to affect the Hollywood casino. I don't know if what they're gonna integrate or not integrate as it relates to that change in state law.
More my curiosity than anything, but that could be a pretty substantial amount of money if we get it on the ground floor with UG and try and get our fair share of it.
No, I don't disagree. I mean, I'd have to go and look and see exactly how the revenue sharing agreements were structured. It may just be some whatever percentage of gross revenues goes to each city. So if their gross revenues go up due to sports gambling, then ostensibly our share of that would go up as well. But I don't know if it accounts for changes in state law or anything like that. But it'll be something we keep an eye on for as this year progresses and we look into 2023.
Are you talking about only the revenues through Hollywood from sports betting, or just?
Oh, it's all right. So you were asking specifically on the gambling, on the statewide gambling for just overall.
Not through Hollywood.
Yeah.
The sports betting, and have they even decided who's going to control that yet? Is it?
I believe it's controlled at the state level as far as distribution goes, but I couldn't say for sure. I need to look into that a little bit more.
I think that we probably should really stay on top of that. Because is it going to be a storefront place where you can go in and place bets, or is it going to be through the casino?
It's not just Hollywood. The way I understand, I read it. Any club or anybody who has the lottery can do sports bet. Filling station up here, you can do sports bet there too. I mean,
That's my understanding as well.
Yeah.
I thought the question was
So it's
about
gonna be
specifically this
Yeah,
revenue
that's
line
what I'm
item.
saying. We don't want to miss out on our fair share of that revenue.
it should be substantial.
Yeah, we'll definitely keep an eye on it, and we'll have something to report. We'll do some more research into that and get a little bit more clarity at the next meeting. Did everybody hear me okay with the roof work going on? Okay, not even sure if I can get up there and holler at them to do that. They're on the roof, yeah. Bear with us a little bit. I'll try and speak a little bit louder. They're trying to wrap up before the rains come, is what they're trying to do. I think our fire chief is going to look into that real quick. On to any other questions on that front before we move on? On to Q1 court fines for 2022. We're doing very good. I think our officers have been busy. We've had some big court dockets the last couple of months. We've added an additional, our part-time staff members, so our capacity to take revenue has increased over the last couple of weeks. Probably not reflected so much in this report yet. But we use this is a little bit hard of a metric to predict with a lot of accuracy because there's a lot of variables that go into the development of the collection of that money. So what we use is a running 5-year average to estimate how we think this year is going to go. That running 5-year average for 2022 is $408,400. Right now we're at 31% of that collection, which is good because typically we're at 25% of where we end up with the year. So hopefully that continues to perform well. Again, if we take a kind of a slight, if dockets start to get a little bit smaller, if people's ability to pay takes a little bit of a dip, we've at least increased, we've kind of built up our war chest in the court fine revenue area to stomach some of that if it happens later on. No indication of that happening yet. The dockets have still been pretty big. We've had some pretty big revenue days from people paying on their fines. So at this point, I'm not anticipating a big downturn or any downturn at all. But if we did, then it looks like we're kind of ahead of the game in our collections in this area. Ambulance fees is the area that is probably the only major area of revenue collection that I don't know if I say I have a concern on, but we're definitely looking into it more. We're at 19% of our adopted revenue for 2022 of $190,000. Typically, we're much higher than that at 28%. The main reason is in February, our revenues, for whatever reason, just took a big hit in that area. We've reached out to our billing company, Omni, to see if they've got a little bit more insight into that. Month to month, we can expect anywhere between $14,000 to $18,000 in revenue collection from EMS and ambulance billing. That February was closer to $7,000, and we're not exactly sure why. I mean, that's not an area we have a whole lot of control or oversight over. It's just we collect the money and count it as it comes in, and for whatever reason, February was down. It bumped up to regular numbers in March, so it's not a larger systemic issue, but it was normal in January, big dip in February, and normal in March. So we're keeping an eye on it. Again, our EMS director and deputy fire chief, Ben Morrow, is going to be reaching out to our billing company to see if there's anything from a reporting standpoint. Is this just a timing thing or what? But that way we can at least have a little bit better context of that February number. And if we need to kind of pivot and readjust by mid-year based on what we hear from that, we will. But right now, this is really the only major area of revenue that we're going to be taking a second look at because there's that 1 month that for whatever reason that we're not sure of is underperforming. But hopefully we've got a little bit more details for you as we do more budget reporting for the rest of the year. Motor vehicle taxes, this always comes in over budget. This is based on a kind of a estimated state formula that they give us. So we're at 30% of our estimated 2022 revenue of $147,000. Typically, we're at 27% of what our year-end revenue is. So I expect us to exceed, probably closer to that 150, 155,000 once the year is done. Again, not a whole lot to report on that front either. Overall, our general fund reviews are doing pretty well. So similar to our other kind of individual areas where we've got areas where we're overperforming that we can help weather through a potential kind of decline in some of those revenue returns. That's where we're at with the whole general fund revenue side of things. We're at almost 40% of what our budgeted revenue estimates are for the end of the year. Typically, we're closer to that 36%. So again, I think our habit of conservatively estimating some of these revenue line items is going, at least at this point, it indicates it's going to bear out to our benefit by the year end. So that's on the revenue side. Any questions before I move on and touch on expenditures? So our general fund expenditures, again, this is just a broad overview of it. What we're looking at is a table from the last 5 years, fiscal year 2017 to 2021, of what we reported in Q1 and what the audited final was in that for that same year. So the average the average expenditure level as it relates to our final audited expenditure level for those previous 5 years is at 25%, which makes sense because it's 25% into the year. Right now, we're a little bit under that. Again, not wildly under that, but under is under, which is good. So we're about 1.6 million out of our $6.5 million budget, 24%. So we're keeping costs essentially on budget as predicted. There's been no major areas of expenditure, no emergency purchases or anything like that. You'll see, I think these numbers actually got reported in April, but if you took a look at that budget breakdown, you'll kind of see by department, where everybody's fallen, and everybody is pretty much hitting on the budget benchmarks that we expect them to hit at this time of year. So general fund expenditures, exactly where we want them to be, if not slightly lower than we want them to be, which is good. Our other funds, revenue and expenses, we'll just go through these really quickly because, again, we're only got 3 months of data to report on. Debt service, not a lot to report there. We don't have any expenditures. Our 2022 expenditures are all wrapped up in those principal and interest payments for our debt. Those payments haven't happened yet. When they do, that'll make up that $866,000 expenses. Our revenues coming in from that, pilot payments, property taxes, the same thing that populates our general fund revenue on the operations side of things. Special sales tax fund, the expenses in this fund are pretty much all related to a lease payment for some of our fire equipment. We'll see some more in that fund as our street program gets off our 2022 street maintenance program gets off the ground. Before we left, Dusty did put together a surface seal and street maintenance project package that we'll be reviewing and hopefully putting out to bid here pretty soon. Some of that will get funded through the special sales tax fund. And also the special highway fund. We kind of determine how those get allocated after the project gets approved and is off and running. Revenues coming in stronger than what they typically would, slightly stronger, I should say, about 5% where they typically are at this point of the year, which makes sense because these are related to the sales taxes that we reported on in the general fund side of things. The special sales tax funds looks good. We will have probably some more expenses coming out of there that have hit over the last couple months in our parks areas, all budgeted. If you remember the $80,000 for the surveying and the design document development, that'll kind of trickle in as that work gets done throughout the summer. Special highway fund, the formatting of the graph is a little wonky, but we do have $50,000 in revenue from the special highway fund. Again, this comes through our state gas tax. And so that's performing better. That's another area that usually it's based on a pre-calculated formula that they give us to estimate what our year end would be. For whatever reason, they always undershoot that. So I do expect that to happen again this year. We've had about $5,000 worth of expenses this year, I believe, 4,000 or 5,000. All of those have been for snow removal expenses, so salt, that kind of thing. Economic Development Fund, not a whole lot to report out of there. The only changes I will point out in this fund is that in addition to our dues that we pay the Wyandotte EDC, which is paid out of this fund, we've also been paying our dues for the Chamber of Commerce out of this fund. So, which kind of, it's all the same type of organizations and activity level. But again, we're not talking about a tremendous amount of money out of this fund. I don't imagine very many surprises out of the Economic Development Fund as the years go on. Solid Waste Fund, and we'll talk a little bit more about this afterwards, but it's actually performing a little bit better than what it would, higher than previous years as it relates to what the rates are, which is good. So we're at $70,000 in revenue right now out of the $223,000 estimated. And expenditure levels are right where we're at. Expenditure levels are based on largely what our contracted amount for case disposal is. None of this graph that's being presented right now reflect any of the changes that we made with that last addendum. So we'll probably start to see that in the from the expenditure side of things at our next quarterly review. But we'll talk a little bit more about the actual delinquency rate and the revenue performance a little bit later on this evening. I will point out that we use our utility billing software for more real-time data. So if you notice a discrepancy between what's reported in this fund or in this presentation and some of the other finance reports that you get, it's because the data that we use, it's all the same data, but the utility billing we can get a little bit more up to date rather than wait for some of the reporting and entry pieces of it for it to hit our general ledger. So this is going to be our more accurate look at how this fund and the sewer fund is performing. And if you look at the audit, our estimates for both of those enterprise funds really track pretty closely to the audit. So this has been a good way for us to track it. It's accurate numbers, and it gives us a good idea what to expect for the rest of the year for that fund. Kind of rinse and repeat for the sewer fund, performing pretty much exactly how we expect it to perform. I don't see at this point any reason to think we're not going to hit revenue areas. And unless we have some big catastrophic need for repair or some kind of emergency situation with the sewer system, I doubt we'll hit that $843,000 expenditure level either. But we budget for those. We budget about $60,000 to $80,000 between service contracts and repairs and things like that. That way it's there in case the need arises. In the last couple of years, the repairs that have been needed have not been to that level, but we budgeted for it in case it is. But other than that, not a whole lot to report out of the sewer fund. So going on, looking forward to the rest of the year for budget development. June 1, the county will send us our valuation data. And last year, it also included the revenue neutral rate information. They don't have to provide that information until June 15th, so we'll keep an eye out to see if their reporting is the same for that. On June 13th, at our next city council meeting, we'll have a presentation that kind of looks out for our actual projections for revenue and expenditure for this year, which will be kind of set our baseline for 2023. So we know what kind of reserves we're looking at and how to base our future looking for revenue and expenditures based on how we think 2022 is going to perform. We'll have at least another month worth of data, hopefully 5 months, probably not 5 months in all of our areas, but more than 3 anyway. By June 15th, that's the deadline for the county clerk to get the revenue neutral rate information to us. Again, the revenue neutral rate is the tax rate for the current year that would generate the same amount of property taxes as levied last year. So we kind of went over this last year, but there are a lot of issues with this calculation. It's kind of a one size fit all that the state put together that really disincentivizes some of the economic development tools that we've already had in place for a decade plus, namely our industrial revenue bonds. As those properties come back onto the tax roll, they add to your assessed valuation, but the revenue neutral rate calculation doesn't account for that. And none of the changes that they've made at the state level account for that. So they think that that's the same value. They don't count that as new revenue. And they also don't count the loss of pilot payments, which we were receiving when they were off the tax roll as part of the IRB. So that's always a consideration that we're going to be looking at as long as this state law is in effect. June 27th or July 11th, depending on where we're at and we're in our review processes, that's when we'll be, that's the latest that we can present some kind of resolution to the council if we wanted to consider exceeding the revenue neutral rate. We have to notify the county clerk by July 20th, which kind of details the budget calendar from that moving forward. If we do want to exceed the R&R, the hearing to do that cannot be earlier than August 20th or later than September 20th. This is not the same as the budget public hearing, but they can take place at the same date. So if we do want to exceed the revenue neutral rate and set a public hearing to that effect at their second meeting in September, we can do that. And then we would also need to hold a public hearing for the actual budget adoption, either at that date or a later date. August 8th, we'll present the mid-year budget report for 2022, as well as some updated figures for 2023. August 22nd is when we would likely hold a R&R public hearing if we were to have one and set the maximum fiscal year 2023 budget and call for the public hearing. And then September 12th would be when staff would recommend, this is just sticking to our normal calendar, If we do stick to that normal calendar, September 12th is when we would hold that final budget adoption public hearing. Some of these dates can kind of shift a little bit depending on where we're at and how the review rolls out over the summer. But if we stick to how we've done it in the previous years, this is what we can expect over the next couple of months. So any questions on this or anything else? All right, well, that's all I've got for you. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Zach. Item number 6, your report on delinquent billing policies.
So this is just wrapped up in the staff report. So other than what's provided in the written report, we did want to provide some kind of update onto our delinquent billing practices. So right now, what our current policy is if you're late, which is we'll add a $5 late fee added to your utility bill if it's not paid by the 15th of every odd numbered month. So we try to get our bills out that last week of the month before the month they are due. So they're due every odd numbered month. So we try to get them out the last week of every even numbered month. So this date can be adjusted if we've got some delays on our side, if the post office has got delays. Just this last month, bills were a little bit late getting delivered. So we pushed the delinquent date out till last Friday. So people weren't automatically given that late charge until this past week. So that just gives folks a little bit more of breathing room because we know some of the stuff out of our control means some of the times they get their bills delivered late. So that's in our control. If an account has not been paid at all, so if they've got a balance that they've not paid on or making good faith effort to pay on over 2 billing cycles, which is 4 months, then that's when we count that as eligible to be sent to collections. Now, to give you a little bit more background on this, the actual start to sending anyone to collections has been kind of a moving target. We were all set to start this program, the collections piece of it. We did some ordinance changes to allow for that in late 2019 with the intention of sending delinquent accounts to collections in 2020. And then once 2020 started rolling on and the market and everything at the economy was so kind of topsy-turvy, we didn't feel comfortable sending, a handful of folks to collections when there was a lot of this other economic hardship going on. So we kind of held off on it. In late 2021, we started reaching out to some of these folks who had these delinquent accounts. Right now, out of those, let's see, I think it was 80 accounts, 31 customers are currently on some kind of payment plan. So we've talked to them one-on-one and said, here's your balance, what works within your budget to, make some good faith effort to get these paid out, because we don't want to send anybody to collections. It's more of an administrative headache for us to keep track of that, and it adds more costs to the people who might have a good reason for not, or at least an understandable reason for not being able to pay. So if we can work with these customers and just make sure that they're making good faith efforts and sticking with the plan that they develop, then we're not going to send them to collections. But there was 31 accounts who had some kind of payment plan set up in late December and into January, and many of them have paid up. And so and aren't on these payment plans anymore. They're either had old accounts that they moved out and couldn't pay their outstanding balance and they've taken care of that, or they still live here and didn't have an ability to pay for whatever reason and now are making that efforts toward it. So as our year goes on, we kind of, part of the utility billing process now is to check in on those accounts to make sure that they're sticking with what they are what they told us they would be able to do. The billing that was due in January 15th, the delinquency rate at that point was 11%, which is way too high. The March 15th delinquency rate, so this is based on the amount of money that we sent out that we billed versus the amount of money that came in. So the billing that was due March 15th, you'll see that delinquency rate was only 1%. That's a little bit of a misnomer because that's when people started paying down their outstanding balances. So we collected more than what we billed out, technically speaking, because people were paying on those outstanding balances. So if we billed $100, $99 of that got paid back. Now there's some timing issues in that. You'll see the billing that was due in May 15th. So we've got about another week left in this month, and this will probably change a little bit to the good, but that delinquency rate is now at 7%. So if you go from 11% And then between that period and now, we made some outreaches to folks, sent some letters, did some kind of one-on-one working out with what can you pay? Can you make sure that people are paying what they say they can pay? We're able to get that delinquency rate down 4% from where it was at the end of last year. So right now, we're going to continue to monitor the performance of that because that seems to work. So if people continue to pay and we can get our delinquency rate sub 5%, then I'm comfortable with those levels, much more comfortable than I was with 11 to 12%. Some of those customers, some of those that did not were not among the 31 who set up payment plans for us, they're just going to get sent to collections. And at that point, if they still live here, then we'll create them a new account that starts at 0, and they'll still accrue bills for their address, but their outstanding balance will be sent to collections, and we'll collect on it that way. That way, we'll work with the auditors, make sure it's reflected in our books appropriately. But that way, going forward, say they have a $2,000 outstanding balance, and they just think, well, I'm never going to be able to pay on that. We'll send that amount to collections and say they can worry about that. At that point, it's at our hands. They need to work with collections. But then that way, when their bill comes every other month, it's for $3,740 and not for $2,500, and they could hopefully get paying on those accounts.
So at what point do we stop service for people who haven't paid and are at that point years behind in their payment? Like, because the rest of the taxpayers are paying their bill virtually or literally.
Mm-hmm.
So when do we stop providing that service?
So at the next billing cycle that we will bill out at the end of June and be due July 15th, that's when we're in the lead up to that. We'll be able to see on these accounts. I noted that we've got these lists of outstanding accounts and outstanding balances. We're going to reach back out to them if they still not made any payments and say, this is kind of your last. If you don't make a payment or some kind of effort to pay this down, you're not going to get. That's when we cut off your service for it. So we're going to we made these kind of niceties type outreach to folks, and it has some demonstrable results. We went from 11% to 7%. That's what we would like to keep it at, but we understand that we might need to use a little bit firmer touch on some of these other folks. We're going to give it one more billing cycle, and then at that point, midsummer, if they're not, we'll have a list of problem addresses that we'll send to Casey's disposal. They've got a software that'll keep track of that, and they know not to pick up on whatever address until we tell them otherwise.
So just to clarify, they'll go to collections first, and then the next billing cycle, that's when service would stop if they still haven't paid.
So they'll go to, if we can't make any, that could happen at the same time. And that's kind of how we're couching it in this midsummer billing period, that we're going to send this final outreach to everybody who's not made any payments previously and let them know if you don't, then this amount's going to be sent to collections and you're going to stop getting service until you start paying.
So if it's the June bill
Mhm.
and someone doesn't pay, they don't go to collections yet, and then they don't pay in July, then they go to collections after they don't pay in July.
Well, we bill every 2 months, remember? So
Okay, so
we'll
that's
send a
fine.
bill. So we'll, in the lead up to when we send out the bill that will be due July 15th, we will tell people that those outstanding accounts, that if you've not, our records indicate you have not paid yet. And so if you don't make a payment or set up a payment plan before July 15th, we'll send this account to collections and cut off your service. As far as your trash is not going to get picked up anymore.
Right. Well, I just to clarify, so I'm not for the people who already have delinquent accounts, but the policy going forward. So say someone is moving into the city.
Oh,
and
I got you.
Like, what's our policy for at what point do they go to collections and at what point do we cut service?
We're going to keep it at that 2 billing period, so 4 months worth of unpaid bills. So this is still in the phase where we've not officially sent anyone to collections yet. So once we get that process started, hopefully we don't have to, but I'm assuming we will in midsummer, then that will be the policy. That if I move in, I don't make any payments for 2 months, my account's going to get sent to collections.
And
then
again, I mean, the goal is to
right.
be in compliance
Mhm.
and get people up to date.
Because that gives us, so we've billed them once, they've not paid. Okay, but that gives us another billing cycle to make that outreach to say, hey, you've got this. Is there some kind of billing error? Is there an address error? It gives us that other 2 months to make sure before we send them to collections that there's not something else that is hinking up the process.
Right, absolutely.
Mhm.
Does anyone else have any questions or thoughts?
It sounds like a lot of work just on your end even working with everybody and the payment plans.
That piece of it was, that is a little bit of a.
That's labor
administrative-
intensive and
yeah.
keeping track of it. But it almost sounded like when you was talking about sending stuff off to collection agency, and then that gets sent off, and then they get put back to zero, and then their service, it sounds like you said it still continues
If they
at that
pay.
point,
If they pay.
if they pay at the collection agency.
No, so we'll send them to collections. If they got $2,000 worth of outstanding bills and we send that amount to collections, then that's for them, that's between them and the collection agency to get that figured out. And obviously we'll get our money when the collection agency.
But we're still going to
collects.
provide service then?
We'll still provide service if they pay. So their account balance would start at zero. And if they pay, then they'll continue to have service. If they don't pay, then we will cut off their service.
Okay.
I guess my question is if they can be $2,000 behind.
Mhm.
Like that's for the people who are currently delinquent, since from now on, it would be if they're 4 months behind, they're cutting service. So they wouldn't have the ability to go $2,000 in the hole
Correct, right.
after this policy.
Mhm.
Do we have people that are $2,000 behind?
No, I mean, we do have quite large ones. A lot of them stemmed from when we stopped sending them to special assessments. So with outstanding balances, what we used to do before we switched over, it became the billing agent for sewer too. This happened in 2018. We would send outstanding balances to be specially assessed to their taxes, which typically meant they got paid, but they wouldn't get paid for another year and a half after that. We needed money to pay the vendor. So that's why we stopped that practice. With the intent, again, in 2018, 2019, with the intention of moving forward with this collection process that just got delayed through these other circumstances. But we don't have a lot of customers who are that far behind, no. I mean, it's mostly in that, I mean, there's a couple hundred of them. I mean, or not say a couple hundred, a few customers that have a couple $100 outstanding. Which is, could be, depending on their sewer bill, 3 months or, 2 years or whatever. We just want to avoid getting to your point, Mayor, where anybody has that kind of outstanding account.
Right.
Mhm.
Absolutely. Okay.
So Zach, are you the one that's making the contact with these people and trying to make the arrangements? For the
That's done.
payments?
I mean, I have some role in it, but our office administrator is our previous office administrator did all the legwork to kind of set up all these different payment plans and has a way to track them all. And our new office administrator has been trained on. And it's really, at this point, for those 31 accounts, it's a lot of just monitoring. I mean, it is, to your point earlier, it is a little labor intensive to make sure that they're
Well, I was gonna
keeping
say,
track
that's
of them.
not really something that should be in your job description. We need to make sure we get some positions filled.
More people would always be nice. I don't disagree, but the office administrator is doing a good job at this point so far. And the idea is not to add any more to that payment plan. This is our kind of master list of 31, and our goal is to not increase that list. It's just to make that work down as they continue to pay.
Now, the other question I have is that what you're discussing here, it sounds great and everything, but is that Mike Webb's decision to make, or is that a city council's decision to make? How you handle?
We've always handled it from an internal policy standpoint, so not necessarily a council's. Now, if you were to give us direction one way or the other, we'd
No,
obviously.
I kind of like it the way it is.
Mhm.
I was just kind of curious about that.
No. I mean, it's both our billing systems as far as how we bill, the rates and all that are we offer our recommendations, and you guys are the final approval from that. But from a nuts and bolts operational standpoint, the policies that we manage that is kind of handled within internally the staff.
I think, again, great job on your end and great information before on the other budget stuff on the quarter, but for sending stuff to the collections agency, that's good. I mean, I'm glad that we're doing that, but I would be really reluctant to provide any service after that until we get reimbursed complete before we start that process over again. I don't know if there's a better way to handle it, but if somebody's 1,000 in the hole,
Right.
you know, now we're just going to start over again for that debt to get built back up, or, you know,
It'll be kind of a, wait and see how it shakes out once they're actually sent to
Yeah.
collections and they know that we've got
it
some
sounds like
teeth
you're
through our
giving them the benefit of the
policies,
doubt for 2 months after
essentially.
it goes to the collection agency. Is that correct?
Well, no, not necessarily, because if we'll give them that indication. If they don't make any outreach, if we send out our bills and make outreach those second and third weeks of, third and fourth weeks of June to our July customers, or for our July billing to those customers who we know haven't made any payments and haven't made any payment arrangements, then July 15th, it's not a 2-month waiting period.
Okay.
It's that July, you need to reach out to us by July 15th and have some kind of,
Okay.
something set up so we know that you're going to pay.
Well, it sounds like you're all over it. I appreciate that.
We're trying to work it down. I mean,
It sounds like it.
It's good. I mean, it's just better management of the funds this way. It is labor intensive, but the idea is at this point to make that labor intensiveness go down, because we're working down those pay plans as those get paid off, and we don't have to worry about it anymore.
Thank you.
So what all services are included in this?
Just trash and sewer.
Just
Well,
trash
and it
Trash
depends on which
and sewer?
trash and sewer. Unless you're on septic, then it's just trash. And that would be just for residential customers. I don't think we have any outstanding, any collections eligible outstanding business accounts.
Is that all you had for us on that one, Zach?
That is all I have.
Perfect. We will go on to council and mayor comments. First, we'll go through the staff though and department heads. Zach, did you have anything for the manager's report?
I don't, other than to thank everybody who was able to make it out and help out over the weekend for cleanup, and everybody who participated in the cleanup. It was a little bit slower this year for whatever. I think we decided it was too nice. Usually it's cold and rainy and there's a line down the block, but this year it was pretty nice out. So I think other people had other stuff to do. So a little bit slower this year, but we filled up Adelante. So thanks to them for coming. Got a good full dump truck bed of electronics to give the Unicore. So thanks everybody who made it out, and to everybody who participated and didn't dump in the ditch somewhere. That's all I have.
Ms. Dion? I don't have anything. Captain Short? Chief Whittem?
Yes, as usual, new flags will be going up this week in honor of Memorial Day, as we've done in the past. So we will be out doing some flagpole and everything else on Wednesday.
Thank you for doing that. Councilman Adams?
Zach, how are we sitting for office staff? You mentioned, are we fully employed at this according to the budget?
No, because we have the permit specialist position. That is the one that we are still looking to fill. We've had some interviews for that position. I think we've got maybe 1 or 2 this week, but a couple candidates have emerged to kind of the top of the list that we'd like to reach out to, and it's just a matter of getting that sewn up. But from an administrative point of view,
Front office is fully employed?
front office is fully staffed at this point, yes. We've got our part-time court clerk, our part-time deputy court clerk, which has been, this is the last docket. He was able to kind of relieve the police services clerk, so she was able to stay at the police department during that docket, which is one of the reasons why we wanted to do that, because she's got a lot on her plate too. So we've got that part-time position. We've got our full-time municipal court clerk, myself, the office administrator, and our finance director, as well as our planner, city manager. So the only vacant position would be our permit specialist, which hopefully is filled pretty soon.
And I know I've heard this 100 times, but when does a special tax, when does that end?
End of 2024. We've been trying to just sprinkle in, information to folks about how that has
Right.
benefited us over the last couple of years, which it has. I mean, from infrastructure, from equipment to projects. I mean, we wouldn't have been able to get a lot of stuff done without that revenue source.
Right, and then I just was kind of wondering how much time we had left before it's really, that's right around the corner.
Mm-hmm.
And so I really appreciate you putting in the newsletter, those benefits of it, and I think we need to keep going with that.
Right.
And then I want to thank the public safety departments for their actions this morning on the lot across the street from my house. It was good to see the police and fire department on the scene and see how they operated in a real live situation, and they did a fantastic job. Ben Morrow did a nice job heading things up, and firefighters did a great job. The police officer, the investigator was there. And so it was, this is great to see it in action, see a quality group of people doing a quality job. So thank you very much.
Councilman Bishop?
Zach, you go above and beyond, dude. I mean, all the extra work you put in is very much appreciated by us. And can we get the public work people to pick up the dead critters on the roads?
Right now, that's how we've been handling that in the past. Hey, thank you for the comments. But our code enforcement officer will pick up that if it's in the public right of way. So if there's something, if there's a deer carcass that's lying in the middle of the street, we've typically been able to handle that. If it's a dead raccoon in somebody's backyard or something like that, we won't
On the
handle.
street.
Yeah, if you hear something about that, just give City Hall a call and we'll
Fourth and K 32.
4th and K 32.
It's a raccoon.
Oh, okay.
Certainly.
Okay.
He's a-
Take that one. Okay, we'll let them know.
Run over
Yeah, flatten them out.
That's all I got. Thanks.
Councilman Millat?
Same, from me, Zach, on your above and beyond is for sure. And I think most of the thanks should probably go to you for the dumpster days, because you're the one that arranges all of that. There from beginning to end, it's much appreciated. Okay, I was talking about that. Now, I have been to several soccer games at the park, and I've got grandkids to get down there now, so I go there quite a bit more. There are so many compliments on the way that's run down there by Mike Martin. The concession stand gets rave reviews from people. And I talked to Mike a little bit, and what I'd like to do is when this budget process begins is maybe see if there could be a little bit of money put in the CPPS board to try and redo those fields where those kids play soccer. Because if you go to Bonner's fields, they're really nice. They're really well maintained. And you go to Edwardsville and they're pretty splotchy with grass and the moles and all that. I would like to see some effort done in the off season on those fields. If that could get relayed to the CPPS board maybe. And I'd just like to mention that. But we do get a lot of compliments on that situation down there. The other thing is I would like to, Mike's not here, so I can't direct it to him. But I'd like to direct something to the mayor. Is there any way that you can speed up the process on the construction on 4th Street?
He gets down there. and
But
points out.
it is ridiculously slow as far as I'm concerned. And if it's a fault of the railroad, I think we should try and pressure the railroad somehow. If it's the fault of the UG, we should ask them. If it's the fault of the construction company, I think we should ask them. It's been too long for this to be going on the way it is. So I'd just like to ask if there's anything you could do to maybe twist some arms or something on that.
Zach, do you have any?
Well,
thoughts
we've got
on that?
our Dusty was our previous kind of contact with the project folks over there, but we've got all their information and can reach out and, put a little squeeze on to see when this is going to get wrapped up.
Yeah, I very seldom ever get phone calls from citizens,
Mhm.
but that is the one concern now that does come up
Mhm.
out on the street. So, but I think that project has taken a lot longer than it should have taken. So,
Yeah, I don't
anyway,
disagree.
and once again, thank you so much, and for everybody that helped at the trash day. So, thank you. All from me.
And that was on my list too, Zach, the 4th Street, just kind of some updates. So if there's anyone I should send an email to or anything along those lines, maybe you can just let me know.
I will. I'll reach out tomorrow to the project director contacts that we've got to at least see what a timeline update is, and then from that point, see what we can't do to expedite it where we can.
Very good.
Mm.
Councilman Shriver?
I will add and second and third everybody's comments about Zach. Well, everybody goes above and beyond, but these quarterly budget presentations are so helpful. There's no surprises along the year. There's no catching our breath, whatever the case may be. They're just extremely helpful. And I know that takes a lot of time for you to put those together. I'd like to thank Sandy for volunteering to serve on the Edwardsville Fund Advisory Board. I don't know, people realize that it's kind of hard to find people to serve on the boards. And so greatly appreciate that. Thank you. And as far as the 4th Street goes, that will be exciting when that happens, because it's exciting. I think we have a new restaurant in town. And as far as the budget, the sales tax items, I think we had a couple of businesses leave last year, or maybe this year. And now we have a couple new ones coming on. I think the liquor store down the street too. So some cash register is going to be going here soon. But I think the restaurant might be open, might be maybe June officially.
I
but
think they've been doing the soft open. I'm
I
not
think
sure.
they'll be excited for the road to be open.
Yeah, and we've had some communication with them too to keep them up to date in as much as we can on the opening of that street section. But I do think they've got, it's called Grill 32.
Right.
I've not been there yet. I think they've got, like I said, I think it's soft open, limited hours, limited menu until middle of June.
Limited access.
Yeah, limited access, right.
And I want to add one more thing. The city cleanup day, I think it's a fun day. It was kind of slow this year. But Councilmember Adams, I want to thank your grandsons. They were tremendous. And for 2 teenagers to come on a Saturday and work like that says a lot for you. And I wanted to let them know that
I'll
too.
pass that on.
Yes. Thank you for showing them how to give back to it. That's all I have.
Councilman Scott?
Sorry I missed the cleanup. It sounds like it was another great event, and I hated missing it, but I twisted my knee at work, and so it's been challenging to say the least. So again, I apologize for missing that. I look forward to working with everybody that volunteers, and the fire department does a great job of being there as well. And so it's a good team city get together, the way I look at it. Was there any problems or anything that anybody saw for the traffic on race weekend? Anybody see any issues up there on 110th Street? Anything at all?
I didn't hear any, and I asked our
Okay.
regatta folks too, who held their boating event that same weekend if they had any issues. And we told them ahead of time, just avoid it and go around the other way, and
Okay.
they didn't report anything.
Okay. And then with the sewer connection that's going on up there on the north end on 110th Street, just remind me, I think it was discussed, but I think I might have missed it. Is that connection into our sewer system, and is that sewer line going to the Bonner Springs side? Is that the way I understand that? And if
Yeah.
that's the case, how does that work?
From a,
Payment?
so there, I would have to look and see exactly what this was part of an interlocal agreement that this body had looked at sometime late last year that I would need to take a look at to give you the specifics of it, and we could send it to you. But yeah, it does service the Bonner property, and they're charged at from a rate standpoint, there is a premium out of town rate that they get charged.
Okay.
I don't know off the top of my head what the,
It's double.
right, yeah, that's what it was, yeah. It was,
Okay.
yeah.
I took 2 calls in the last 2 weeks, citizens asking me about it, and I was unclear on how that was getting reimbursed or how that was set up. So if you can send me something, that'd be great.
Yeah, I'll pull the details and send it to the
Okay,
whole
not to
council.
create more work for
No,
you.
no, no,
but-
it's all just in the, right.
A month?
No, which, never mind.
100 one-time fee?
Yes.
Well, there's also connection fees based on whenever they have tenants in there.
And
It's
to-
usage.
Is there any monthly? Okay,
Right,
okay,
yeah, they'll be charged, right.
okay.
If I could speak to that, because it's actually, that's probably 6, 8 years ago
Mhm.
that we negotiated that letter of intent. And we limited the amount that they can run through the sewer. And the purpose of that was really to maintain a lot of usage for that north end. So they really, in the overall scheme of things, they got a pretty small percentage of the capacity of that
Okay.
north end. But we did limit it, so they just couldn't have unfettered access to it.
And then on the 4th Street project, I know we've talked a lot about it, but what is the proposed end date for that as
So-
of right now?
So the last I heard, and this was about 3 weeks ago, that they were about a month out from being done with that side of the project. So I've not had an update or had any outreach myself to see when the updated timeline for that is. But
Okay.
if that were to hold, then we'd only have another week and a half. But
And
I would say if that's the case.
I think if you could update us all about
Uh-huh.
just when the barricades are going to come down and when we can use the road.
Mhm.
It still may not be finished and complete, but I think for us, it's more important to get that traffic flowing again and get our citizens back and forth through there for the post office and the bank.
Yes,
So just advise us when those barricades are coming down, and Garrett and I will come down there and help them move them.
Sure. I'll, like I said, I'll reach out to the project manager that we have contact with and just get an update in the morning and provide that to the council. So at least you know what answers to give if you get asked about it. And then
Yeah.
from there, we'll see what we can't do to
Perfect.
push them.
Thank you.
All right.
Couple of community comments that I've had come my way, aside from when 4th Street can get done, is because 4th Street's still closed, they've had some serious traffic and speeding issues on Newton. They said people going down at least 45 miles an hour between 4th Street and 9th Street. And that was from a couple of different people that live on that road that have let me know that now. So just PD awareness on that and maybe some presence would be great. K32 and 9th Street, there's some overgrowth that's blocking vision. So when people are trying to look out to make a left-hand turn or go straight across from 9th Street, they can't quite see if the traffic's clear. It's starting to get overgrown there a little bit. Let's see. I'm going to try to make this quick tonight. Sandy and Thurman, thank you so much for your willingness to serve on that board. There won't be a whole lot to do really soon, but hopefully we'll get to moving and get some great stuff done here in the community with that. And then a week ago from Saturday, we had our Edwardsville mobile pantry event. This was another record-setting event for us and our community. I just wanted to thank the city and our great volunteers and Margaret, who shows up every time to help. We were able to serve over 500 people. We had over 100 and we had about 150 families signed up, and then also brought a lot of food to the high rise and stocked up on Trent, the local pantry. And so it was another great event brought on by volunteers here in the city. So thank you guys for that. That's all for tonight.
Pulling out of it. Yeah. In the Explorer. I took my truck up to get it free oil to pay for it. Well, yeah. That's what I tell them. I said, I need to get my free oil change that I paid for when I bought the truck.
Yeah.
And I said, when you rotate the components,